everyone, Gabriel Joy here, and welcome to a deep dive. An OC deep dive. I don't know how to start this. Earlier this month, I was asking for video topic ideas on my Instagram at Gabriel Joy, go check it out, and on one of the requests was to talk more about my original characters, or my OCs. I was seeing some other artists on YouTube do a format like this before, and when I was starting this channel, I was kind of thinking about like making a video about just an entire comic or an entire story that I worked on, when I realized that I can actually kind of just divide it up. Like I can make a whole video about just one character, because y'all, the lore goes kind of deep with these guys. And right now, I'm kind of just playing around and experimenting with what kind of videos I really like to make on YouTube, so kind of just throwing everything against the wall right now, and this is one of them. So welcome to the very first of its kind, the OC Deep Dive. And I thought it would be great to start out with the one and the only, my very first OC, and probably the one I have drawn for the longest time, and probably the one that I've drawn the most, and the one that is still on his own little story, which is on Webtoon, and that is our boy, Super Dawg. Yes, that's right, which you can find here on YouTube with incredible voice acting, or on Webtoon. I recommend you watch it first before you watch this, but you know, you can do whatever you want, it's up to you. So I'm going to talk about the origins of my characters, talk about the canon, talk about some of the stories that they've involved in the past, maybe take some art out of the old bin, which might be super embarrassing to the show, but we're here, so that's what we're going to do. And I don't know, from here, talk about kind of what the future of these characters might look like from here on out. As always, feel free to draw along. So let's get started with Part 1, Origins. The origins of Super Dawg. This is honestly extremely mysterious stuff, even to me. I don't really know exactly where this guy came from. I know it began in kindergarten, which was a long time ago. I was at least 5 or 6 years old, and my inspiration came a lot from movies that had released between like 2005 and 2007. So I talked about this in a previous video, but like the 2007 adaptation of Underdog, Word Girl, Kung Fu Panda, Astro Boy, later on movies like Megamind, Big Hero 6, Crypto to Super Dawg, maybe to an extent, because I didn't really watch any Crypto to Super Dawg, but there was an ad on a VHS tape, and I just remember watching that little thing. And I also would probably say that's a big inspiration was some of the toys that I had growing up. Like I had a lot of toys from McDonald's, like the McDonald's like Happy Meal toys. But we also had a few stuffed animals. One of the stuffed animals that I had was a character named Dottie, and he was like this little like dog. This little Dalmatian, this very raggedy Dalmatian. I probably could find a picture of him somewhere and just throw him up on the screen. But he looked like this. He does not look like this anymore. He looks very raggedy and very old now. But yeah, I had a dog, and my sister had a cat, Sasha, who was on here on this channel. I guess maybe a video ago, maybe a couple videos ago, and she had a pink cat, Carnation, and I believe that probably would have been like the inspiration for a pink cat, Super Cat, and the dog. I'm not sure why he's blue though. I think the biggest, maybe it came from Blue's Clues. I know that was a pretty great blue dog in my generation. Have you seen that meme where it's showing like all the blue dogs, like every generation of blue dog comes along, we have Bluey now. I don't know where Super Dawg fits in there, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it was kind of like a conglomeration of some of the stuff that I was watching, very like cheesy superhero inspired content. And it's so interesting because around this time, so up to 2008 was the release of Iron Man, and this is when the MCU kind of started becoming a thing, when the Avengers released in like 2012. But I really didn't get into the MCU until much later, until at least the Civil War in 2016, I believe. So that wasn't what I was looking for my superhero inspiration. My superhero inspiration came exclusively from stuff like Underdog and Word Girl. And you can see how that has influenced me. Very goofy, inspired superhero stories. And I mentioned in a previous video too that I started writing his stories in maybe like the 2nd or 3rd grade, so I would have been about 7 or 8 or 9 years old, and I would write these kind of like little chapter books, and because I had read so many chapter books around this time, so stuff like Hank the Cowdog and Magic Treehouse, wanted to create my own chapter book series. And what I do is I take like I would just take like loose leaf paper and write all these little stories down and have like maybe 10 chapters each. Like each chapter was like a page, and they'd have like a little illustration on them. I wish I could probably find those. It might be really difficult for me to find some of them. Yeah, various stories about this kind of group of superheroes. They were all animals, and they're all inspired by animals, all fighting crime together in a city. And Super Dawg was kind of like my self-insert comfort character, like in a similar way, in that like Super Cat was inspired by my sister's stuffed animal, and I had my stuffed animal, which was the little dog. I kind of maybe projected myself onto him a little bit. And yeah, as my self-insert comfort character, he was canonically like kind of between the ages of 10 and 12 in dog years. And he's still around 10, I would say, like in the current comic. In the early days, like when I was developing this character, he had, siblings like me, he played soccer like me, he loved building things and drawing just like me. He had a best friend who also loved those things too. An original dog also felt really insecure because he was very short and small, like I was. It was a very big part of like the original story that I wrote. And I also am a huge proponent of self-insert characters, I should say. I don't think this is cringe at all. Self-insert characters are an awesome way to write, because you should write what you know, and I think you can get a lot out of theming wise and a lot out of story wise. So don't be afraid to write your little self-insert characters. I do that all the time. I'm realizing also that I kind of fantasized about living in a city on an island, which is, I don't know, very Lilo and Stitch. That was one of my favorite Disney movies growing up, because I grew up in a very suburban, semi-rural area of the United States, and when we visited big cities, it was always like super amazing to be able to walk through like this massive places and go up these huge buildings, imagine the superhero battles that would happen in the city. So I think it was a bit of wish fulfillment on my part to kind of like have all the superhero stories in the Super Dawg universe take place in a large city, which used to be called Pet City at one point. It's now called Talu City. And all the characters actually had these extremely generic names that were kind of, you could tell, were created by like an 8-year-old. and you still kind of see that, but I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the biggest important things that I started developing with Super Dawg when I was in like middle school and into early high school was kind of this rule that I came up with, and this was this balance of like cuteness factor and coolness factor. So coolness factor, of course, being big fights and massive explosions and robots and monsters and just like extremely intense action sequences, action oriented. And then balancing that with cuteness factor. So stuff like they're animals, like they're little pets, and they can have little cute faces, and they can have really tender and sweet moments, and they can, be friends, power of friendship, all this kind of stuff. So balancing these two things, this coolness factor and cuteness factor, has continued even into the comic that I'm creating right now. And I think that was probably also inspired by a lot of like Nintendo stuff, like Mario and Kirby, like those kinds of video games where you're doing all these extremely incredible action oriented like moves and power-ups, but they're also, pretty cute at the end of the day. They have these pretty big eyes, they got this like huggable kind of nature to them. Pokemon also would fall into that category. Astro Boy falls in that category. A lot of media from Japan falls into that category, and that makes sense since that was a lot of the content that I was like consuming when I was around like middle school and high school. But that ended up becoming a very important part of Super Dawg. And later on, when I was watching shows like Rebecca Sugar's Steven Universe, I was like realizing that having those sweet, tender moments, having those more grounded scenes with the characters and exploring their relationships can be really, really important and can heighten even those big action sequences. So that's kind of what I was pushing for in this story. Let's go into part 2, which is personality, apparently, on this script. Super Dawg. Originally, he was a little bit more of a blank slate, but I think he was very determined. Even though he was small, he had all this ambition, like, of becoming something great, becoming a fantastic superhero one day, very shonen in that regard. And I think he was really, really cool, especially when I was a kid. Over time, though, I think he has become a little more baby in a way, like more puppy energy. Like he went from kind of a big dog, like this fierce protagonist, protagonist to more of like a younger protege with this amazing pet crew of superheroes that he fights with. Very like Poe with the Furious Five or Steven with the Crystal Gems. He just is a little bit more, it's just a little bit more of a puppy. For an example, I was looking back at this document that I wrote in like 2016 about Super Dawg's personality, and in it I said that he was ambitious and determined even when looked down upon, he's hardworking, he's creative and inventive, he's big-hearted, he's determined, adventurous, he loves to take charge, and he hates being talked down upon. Okay, so keep that in mind, and now this is the description I wrote for my webtoon and animated pilot from 2021. Super Dawg is an ambitious young canine, so he's still ambitious. He's always ready for an adventure, so he's extremely energetic, always ready to do something. And he's also a little insecure about his small size for a dog, so also kind of relates to hates being looked down upon. But he's incredibly determined to become a superhero. He hates being called a puppy, even though he is one, which is funny. So I think the difference is I wanted to be Super Dawg when I was a kid, and now I look back on my life and realize that Super Dawg was just me as a kid. So they both hate being looked down upon, and it went from this kind of like badass thing to more of a, aw, he's trying so hard, oh, I want to see him win. Super Dawg's powers have also changed a lot, and slight spoiler, since it's kind of the whole premise of the first webtoon episode, but his superpower is electricity. It's always been electricity it's been electricity for a while, I would say, and at one point he kind of was like, he could just fly, like he had this cape and he could fly, and that was kind of it. He kind of had like this maybe like engineering, like ingenuity to him that he would like to build his own things and his own contraptions, but I kind of scrapped that, and had placed it on some other characters. Originally, adding electricity was kind of an arbitrary decision when I was a child, because I was really obsessed with electronics and engineering, so it makes sense that if it was like electricity related. I was, again, huge Astro Boy fan, but over time it kind of made sense. Like my current reasoning when someone asks me why Super Dawg's powers are electricity, I say it's because he's a puppy and puppies are super energetic, which makes sense actually. But he was kind of overpowered in the original version. I kind of wanted to make sure to heighten the importance of his relationship with the rest of the crew, and that he's kind of the heart of the group. Like he's kind of very Steven-esque in a way. Like he's the one who brings all these characters together. And in the current version of the story, we kind of just discovered that what lies ahead is hopefully like a more gradual kind of shonen arc, so that he doesn't have like all this power right out of the gate. I would love to see kind of more gradual, like getting into his powers, learning to control his powers, and learning what that even means for him. So kind of getting into the future there, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. Which brings me to part 3, the canon. The original story of how Super Dawg accidentally got his powers bestowed upon him, it's kind of a secret, and I kind of talk a little bit about it in the video about how I shrunk Super Dawg into something that was more tangible, something that was easier to create. In my canon brain, there are like 30 Super Dawg stories, and 10 in the original universe, or 10 in the extended universe, I would say. Which explore more of the characters, though this changed a lot since then, and I probably do not want to talk about all of them here because, oh my god, it's so much stuff. It kind of makes me not even want to create it. Like, it just makes me want to talk about it and just pretend that it exists. I'm sure someone out there relates to that, maybe. A little delusional here. I've also had ideas for like alternate universe stuff. So I had like a Zelda fantasy inspired Super Dawg story where they'll have swords and they're like kind of exploring like this more, not medieval, but like a little bit of a high fantasy setting. And they're exploring dungeons and fighting monsters. There's an alternate story where Super Dawg is orphaned and meets Super Cat when he's really, really young. And so there's kind of like this bond that they have. There's this alternate universe where Super Dawg is going out from his like little village, again, kind of very Zelda inspired, where he's going out to kind of find all the greatest heroes, which end up being the pet crew. And I also had like an alternate universe where they're like human versions of the characters, and the human superheroes have like these animal patrons. So it's like if like it was like a boy and he's like is able to summon like the animal patron of like a dog or something like that, which I think is kind of cool, honestly. But the pilot, like the biggest difference being where I started the story, in the original version of the story, I started it with the origin, so how Super Dawg got his powers, which again is a secret, and the origin, and the pilot decided to make the origin a big mystery. And the story is entirely new now, so it's not fully revealed, so I'll just stop there, because oh my gosh, I'm getting into spoilers now. Alright, let's continue with part 4, the art bin. Alright, because Super Dawg has been around in my head and in my art for like over a decade, he and his friends have gone through a lot of phases, and I tried my best to kind of parse out these phases. This is what I do in my spare time, okay? I am totally, completely normal. Inspired by the history of superhero comics, here are the ages of Super Dawg. Let's begin with the Line Eyes age. This is between like 2006 and 2011. You probably noticed this by now, but Super Dawg's name used to be spelled differently. It used to be spelled D-O-G because once we entered the specular eyes phase, which we'll get to, I thought it would be better to create a name that stands out more from the crowd, and so that people wouldn't mix them up with other superhero dogs. And I don't know if it's a good idea. Like, half the time people don't remember how to spell any of the characters' names, which I also changed. But it's always, I'm always open to evolution, I think, and I think that DAWG kind of helps me bring a little bit of my own, like, blackness into the story, too. But, like, dog, you know, we say that. So yeah, the Lion Eyes phase, very, very easy, just big circle head, oval body, stick figure arms or stick arms and legs, and just this lines for eyes. They kind of look like an energy socket. I'm just kind of realizing, at least here in the States, that's what they look like. Yeah, so very, very easy to draw, and I drew all the characters like this. They were very, very, very typical in the way that they're drawn, and I think they're actually very easy to cameo maybe in a future story. In 2012, 2014, I started really getting into Nintendo stuff. I think I had gotten my first Nintendo DS maybe around 2010. I got my 3DS in late 2011 when the price drop happened, the great 3DS price drop. So I kind of got into Kirby and more Mario around this time, and so they kind of entered this little bit of a Kirby eyes phase. This is where they have kind of these oval looking eyes, and then there's like a little line that like curves in the middle, and there's like a white specular hit at the top, and they're black at the bottom. Which super cute for Kirby, but they don't really allow for a lot of expression. Like, you can't really move the eyes in any really particular way, but they do look cute. There was also, I believe around this era, the Turbo Fast Eyes phase. Turbo Fast was like a cartoon series that was based on the DreamWorks film Turbo, which is about a snail that can race in the Indy 500, which is kind of amazing. It's kind of a very goofy premise, but there was kind of this great cartoon series, and I thought the animation was actually really cool when I was watching it, and I thought they had these really cool looking eyes where they had this like line that goes right through them that's straight, so instead of the Kirby eyes being curved, it's like a straight like diagonal line, and I just thought they looked so freaking cool. So there's a few Super Dawg drawings that look like that too. Then we reached kind of 2015, 2018, the massive into soul-staring pupils eyes age, as I call it. I'm not sure where these eyes came from, to be honest with you. I feel like I was starting to get more familiar with Japanese media, so maybe it's a little bit of anime influence, but I'm really not entirely sure. They're so big. Why are the eyes huge? But I drew a lot of these in high school. I think I really liked just filling in those really big eyes. I have no idea where they came from, though. That's what I see, though. It's kind of funny, like, trying to figure out how to group these based on the eyes that I drew, because every now and then I just kind of revamp them. And then we get to kind of this specular eyes age from 2019 till now. This is how I draw most of my characters now, and it's kind of like a little bit of a testament to you can create an art style based on many different art styles. So once you draw on lots of different art styles that you like or enjoy or like to look at, sometimes they end up kind of combining into something that is a little bit more unique. So I would take kind of like a curved line to be kind of the eyelid, and then I just draw a big circle in the middle. Usually it's a bit of a like oval shape, vertical oval shape. And I don't draw like any under part of the eye or anything. So it's kind of just like a whoop. I don't know how to describe it, but like you can't see my finger either, but it's like going around in a circle and then up like a little curve. I don't know, that wasn't very good. But anyway, so these are kind of specular Eyes Age. This is inspired by a lot of the cartoons I was watching around this time, so like Steven Universe, OKKO, makes a lot of sense. Tumblr comics, I was starting to post these around this time, and that was also kind of like a revamp of the style. And I was realizing that kind of my character designs were getting a little bit too detailed, and I needed to kind of bring them back a little bit to make them a little bit easier to draw. And then I posted some Tumblr comics, and then I made the webtoon and YouTube. So that's kind of where we are now. I think the colors of the characters, by the way, because I've been drawing these characters in black and white for most of my life, getting into color theory was really difficult, and I still think that this color on the original Super Dawg story could be better. They're just a little too like high contrast, like printer like colors, like cyan, magenta kind of stuff. And I'd like to bring it back a little bit, so as I'm working on my sequel, I'm like thinking about what kind of color theory that I want to use, and what kind of maybe even monochromatic colors I might want to focus on, because that's what I did on my last comic, Kid Chrysalis, where I focused in on more like individual colors throughout the whole story, and you can kind of see like the colors changing throughout. Which you can't really see a whole lot in Super Dawg, and it kind of makes coloring a lot harder when you're trying to make everything this like high contrast, and not thinking about like what is actually supposed to be in focus. But there's still places to go and things to evolve, of course. And it's kind of wild seeing just how far this has come, which kind of brings me to part 5, which is the future. I am working on a sequel right now. The sequel is a little bit bigger than than my previous comic, than part 1. And it's a little more, I think the tone is a little bit more serious, maybe a little bit more dark, but not super dark, of course. It's still got its Super Dawg charm. It's still got its comedic lightness to it. But I'm really excited about it. I really hope that I can finish writing it before or in the summertime. It's just taking a little bit longer because, well, you know, grad school is taking most of my time, and so is work. So eventually. I always say eventually because that means it will happen eventually. Not to make this like an educational moment or anything, but I mean, it could be a little educational, but it's really cool seeing how far this character in particular has come. Like, the more you draw, the actually better you get. It's crazy. And it helps to have a comfort character like Super Dawg that I've literally doodled in so many places. And being open to change and practicing different art styles results in an art style that's uniquely your own. So draw, just draw so much. Draw when you're bored, draw in class. Don't tell your teacher I said that, but just do it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching. Please watch and read the pilot of Super Dawg and the Pet Crew, now on YouTube and Webtoon. The YouTube video is fully voiced and amazing people worked on it, so please check it out. Links down below. And thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, let me know if there's any more OCs that you want a deep dive on. And my question of the day is, who is your oldest original character and what inspired them? Feel free to use this video as a template if you want to make your own. And and if you have any questions about Super Dawg, feel free to ask them down below. Follow-up videos are always welcome. Yeah. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, stay smart, keep it fun, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!